Tonight, at the glittering company gala, my husband valued me at $1. I decided to return the favor. The chandeliers dripped crystals like frozen tears, casting a cold, fractured light over the sea of expensive suits and glittering dresses. I smoothed down the fabric of my own dress for the 10th time, a nervous habit. It was a simple black sheath, elegant but unassuming. When I'd bought it, my husband, Mark, had told me I looked timeless. Now, standing beside him as he held court with his superiors, I felt less timeless and more invisible. This was Mark's big night. The annual gala for his investment firm and his recent promotion to senior vice president meant all eyes were on him, and by extension, on me. I was supposed to be the perfect accessory, smiling, silent, and supportive. For 12 years, I'd played the part flawlessly. I'd hosted his dinner parties, remembered the names of his clients' children, and edited his late-night reports until my eyes burned. I had believed we were a team, that his success was our success. Lately, though, his wins felt like they were only pushing me further into the shadows. He was 3 whiskeys deep. I could tell by the overly bright glint in his eyes and the way his hand gripped my arm just a little too tightly. "Clara, darling," he said, his voice a theatrical boom that turned the heads of his colleagues. "Mr. Henderson was just asking about your little hobby." He said the word hobby with the same dismissive tone he might use for a child's finger painting. My hobby was a small but growing online business where I restored and sold antique furniture. It was the one thing that was truly mine, a source of pride and a small income I didn't have to ask for. I forced a smile. "It's going well, thank you, Mr. Henderson. I just finished a lovely 1920s vanity." Mr. Henderson, a portly man with a kind face, nodded politely. Fascinating. But Mark wasn't done. He squeezed my arm tighter. "She's so modest. Spends all day covered in sawdust and paint stripper. It's a miracle she cleans up so well, isn't it?" He laughed, and the circle of men laughed with him. It wasn't a shared joke. It was a performance at my expense. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. The dress that had felt elegant now felt like a costume, and I was a fraud. I tried to pull my arm away, but his grip was like iron. "Mark, I need some water," I whispered, my voice tight. He ignored me, turning back to his boss. "She's the secret to my success, you know. Keeps the home fires burning so I can go out and conquer the world." He winked, a gesture so performative it made my stomach churn. An hour later, the CEO was on stage, giving the usual self-congratulatory speech. I had finally managed to escape Mark's orbit and was standing near the back, nursing a glass of sparkling water and trying to breathe. I watched him from across the room, laughing loudly, throwing his head back, the perfect picture of a man on top of the world. He caught my eye and gave me a lazy, triumphant smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a look that said, "This is my world. You just live in it." When the CEO finished his speech and the applause died down, the microphone was left on the lectern. I saw a dangerous idea flicker across Mark's face. He was drunker now, emboldened by the alcohol and the adulation of his peers. Before I could even process what was happening, he was striding towards the stage. A knot of pure dread tightened in my stomach. "Mark, no," I mouthed from across the room, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the crowd. He picked up the microphone, tapping it with a flourish. The feedback squealed for a second, drawing every last eye in the ballroom to him. The band, which had been about to start playing, fell silent. "Evening, everyone," he slurred slightly, the corporate charm starting to fray at the edges. "Don't worry, I won't keep you long. I just want to say a few words about my biggest supporter, my rock, my beautiful wife, Clara." He gestured vaguely in my direction. A spotlight operator, thinking this was a planned, romantic gesture, swung a beam of light directly onto me. I was pinned, exposed. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me, their expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. "She's a real treasure," Mark continued, his voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that felt like poison. "In fact, her support is so valuable, so priceless, that I feel like it's a shame to keep it all to myself." He paused for dramatic effect, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. I could see where this was going. It was a train wreck in slow motion, and I was tied to the tracks. "So, tonight, for a bit of fun, I'd like to start a little auction." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. My blood ran cold. This couldn't be happening. Mark raised a hand to silence them, his eyes locking onto mine with chilling intensity. "That's right. We're going to auction off a dance with my lovely wife, a woman whose tireless efforts behind the scenes made my promotion possible, a woman who gets up an hour early every single day just to make my coffee exactly how I like it." He leaned into the microphone, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that still carried through the entire silent room. "So, what's a bid for a single dance with a woman of such incalculable value? Let's start the bidding low, shall we? To represent the price of that cup of coffee she so lovingly makes, we'll start the bidding at $1. $1. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A wave of heat washed over my skin, the spotlight feeling less like a beam of light and more like an interrogation lamp. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a heavy ringing void where nervous laughter should have been. I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. For a dizzying second, I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching this grotesque theater unfold from the ceiling. Mark's smile was plastered on his face, a rictus of drunken confidence. He scanned the crowd, his eyes glassy, genuinely expecting someone to play along with his cruel little game. But no one did. Men who had been clapping him on the back moments earlier now suddenly found their shoes incredibly fascinating. Women exchanged horrified glances over the rims of their champagne flutes. I saw Mr. Henderson, Mark's boss, with a face like thunder, his jaw tight with disapproval. This wasn't the bold, charming move Mark thought it was. It was a career-ending social suicide note delivered live on stage. And I was the collateral damage. $1. The price of a cup of coffee. Was that what 12 years of my life amounted to? 12 years of putting his career before my own, of moving cities for his promotions, of raising our 2 children largely on my own, while he worked late or traveled for business. I thought about the furniture I lovingly restored, the grain of wood I brought back to life with my own hands, the intricate details I spent hours perfecting. That was my passion, my small defiance against the shrinking world of being simply Mark's wife. And he had just valued all of me, all of my support, all of my love, at the price of a disposable cup of cheap coffee. Something inside me, a fragile thing I had been protecting for years, didn't just crack. It vaporized. It turned into ice-cold rage. The humiliation was still there, a burning brand on my cheeks, but the anger was a tidal wave, extinguishing the fire. My paralysis broke. I took a step, then another. My simple black heels, which I'd chosen to be unobtrusive, clicked against the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo like gunshots in the silent room. Every head turned to follow my slow, deliberate procession toward the stage. I kept my chin up, my eyes locked on Mark. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then annoyance. He made a slight shooing motion with his hand, as if I were a dog that had wandered into the dining room. "Go back to your spot. Don't ruin my moment." I ignored him. I walked up the 2 short steps to the stage, the spotlight following me, a reluctant accomplice in my rebellion. I walked right up to my husband, so close I could smell the expensive whiskey on his breath and see the sweat beading on his upper lip. He opened his mouth to say something, probably to hiss at me to get off the stage, but I didn't give him the chance. With a calm, steady hand, I reached out and took the microphone from his loosened grip. He was so stunned, he let it go without a fight. I turned to face the silent, staring crowd. My heart was still a frantic drum, but my hand holding the microphone was rock steady. I brought it to my lips. "Thank you, Mark, for that." "Very enthusiastic introduction," I said. My voice came out clear and even, slicing through the tension. A few people let out breaths they didn't realize they'd been holding. "And thank you all for your quiet support. It speaks volumes." I let that hang in the air for a beat before turning my head to look directly at my husband. He was staring at me, his face a mottled red of anger and confusion. "I do love a good auction," I continued, my voice taking on a new, crisp, professional tone, the one I used with my high-end clients. "But I think we're auctioning off the wrong item tonight." My eyes dropped to his wrist, to the gleaming, obscenely expensive watch he'd bought himself with his first promotion bonus. The one he polished every night, his most prized symbol of his success. I raised my gaze back to the stunned audience. "We won't be bidding on a dance. Instead, we're going to open the bidding on my husband's Rolex." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Mark's face went from mottled red to a ghostly white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no sound came out. The Rolex wasn't just a watch, it was his armor, the physical manifestation of his ego. He loved that watch more than anything, a constant glittering reminder on his wrist that he had made it. And I had just put it on the auction block. "Let's see," I said, my voice resonating with a newfound authority. I gently took his wrist, my touch surprisingly firm. He was too shocked to resist. I held his arm up for the crowd to see, the stage lights glinting off the diamond-studded face. "This is a Rolex Day Date 40, solid 18-karat gold, a truly beautiful piece, a symbol of power, success, and, as of tonight, marital assets." A nervous titter went through the crowd, quickly morphing into something more. It was a murmur of understanding, of dawning realization. The women in the room, in particular, were starting to look at me not with pity, but with a kind of fierce admiration. "Now, my husband started the bidding for me at $1, I said, looking directly at Mark, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of fury and panic. "But I think this beautiful timepiece, a testament to all the late nights and missed family dinners that bought it, is worth a little more. Let's start the bidding at, say, $20,000. The approximate cost of the family vacation he canceled for a critical golf trip with clients last summer." A man in the front row, a rival from another firm who had always disliked Mark's arrogance, let out a sharp laugh. Then, in a clear voice, he called out, "$20,000!" Mark finally found his voice. "Clara, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he hissed, trying to pull his arm away. I held on tight, my grip like steel. "Raising funds, darling," I said sweetly into the microphone, not looking at him. "Someone called out 20,000. Do I hear 25? $25,000 for this magnificent symbol of a man completely out of touch with reality? 25, a woman in a shimmering sequin dress called from the back. I recognized her as the wife of another SVP, a woman I'd often exchanged weary, knowing glances with at these events. She gave me a sharp, determined nod. "Clara, I'm warning you," Mark growled, his voice a low threat. "30,000, someone else shouted. The atmosphere in the room had shifted entirely. It was no longer a stuffy corporate gala. It was a revolution. People were on their feet, energized by the drama, by the sheer audacity of it all. They weren't bidding on a watch. They were bidding on a statement. They were bidding on my liberation. I ignored Mark's impotent rage. 35,000, I countered on my own behalf. Let's call that a deposit on a new life. And for the legal fees. The crowd roared with laughter and applause. Mr. Henderson was no longer scowling. He was watching me with a look of stunned respect, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He saw exactly what was happening. This wasn't just a marital spat. It was a character assessment playing out in real time, and his newly promoted senior vice president was failing spectacularly. With a final desperate wrench, Mark tore his arm from my grasp. He stood there, breathing heavily, his face a mask of utter humiliation. The spell was broken. The bidding stopped. The crowd fell silent again, waiting to see what would happen next. I lowered the microphone. "The auction is closed," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I looked at my husband, this stranger who had tried to reduce my entire worth to $1. I felt no triumph, only a profound and final sense of clarity. The man I had loved was gone. If he had ever truly been there at all, he had been replaced by this hollow, posturing shell. Without another word, I placed the microphone carefully back on the lectern. I turned and walked, not down the steps and back to my table, but off the side of the stage and straight towards the grand ballroom doors. I didn't look back. I could feel every eye in the room on me. But for the first time all night, I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. As my hand touched the cold brass of the door handle, I heard Mr. Henderson's voice, amplified by the microphone I had just left. "Mark," he said, his tone icy and clear. "My office, Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp, and I suggest you don't wear the watch." I allowed myself a small smile as I pushed the door open and walked out into the cool night air, leaving the wreckage of my husband's career and our marriage behind me. I had walked into that party as an accessory. I was walking out as the auctioneer of my own freedom, and the bidding had started high.